Well, welcome everybody. It is December already, which is a great time to start toilet training for those of you who may know children in nappies. Now, those of you who know me well know I call it toilet timing, not toilet training. This is because many neurodiverse children, parents use traditional methods that don't work so well because neurodiverse children have a problem with what's called interoception. And interoception is when your brain says, I need the toilet. And many of my children don't get that message until it's too late. They'll wet their pants on the way, or even parents will sit the child on the toilet and then when they get off, they'll do a little wee because they haven't got that connection between brain, wee, and poos. So last year, I had an amazing mum come on and share how she listened to my toilet timing podcast and how her sister or cousin recommended it to her and she had amazing success. So I wanted to share that again, but also give you a little bit of an update before we listen to the replay. She sent me an email saying, so good. They never thought their son would go to school in jocks. It was just been so wonderful that he's been able to go off for his dignity. And I think we have to remember that when children are in undies, not nappies, it makes a big difference. But he is still having trouble with wiping his own bottom. And I sent an email back to her saying this is very common because doing poos, wiping your bottom is very sensory. And some of our children don't like the fear of getting poo on their hands, but also the motor skills that are required. So this is often where I'll get an occupational therapist to have a look. Is it sensory or is it like the skills to actually wipe for some of my children? Is it the smell? But the fact they're getting wee and poo in the toilet, I have many parents who the wiping comes much, much later. So I would choose my battles on that one. I'd just be thrilled. And sometimes my children do just get a little smear in their undies and it might take time. But one of the things I've learned over the years, often baby wipes or those flushable wipes are better for poos than toilet paper because they're softer. They often clean a little bit better. So I just thought I'd give you that little hint. So I'm going to jump into replaying the podcast from last year. It does talk a little bit about like setting goals for the year, but you know what? Have a listen now. I'm sure you'll enjoy it, even though it is talking about setting goals for the new year, because I think we did it in January last year, but I really think it's a fabulous podcast. And please, this mum heard about this, but toilet trained her child because someone else recommended this podcast. So this is your opportunity to recommend this podcast to somebody you know, particularly if they have a child starting school in the next year, about toilet timing, not toilet training. And she has so many top tips to take away. Well, if you're listening to this podcast when it drops, getting ready for the new year, or if it is the new year, I always find the end of the year and new year a great opportunity to reflect. And I always do my gratitudes of what I'm thankful for. And then I do my goals for the year and I get my kids to sit down with colored texters. We've done it since they were little and we do our gratitude for the year before and we write thank you and we list everything and then we make our goals for next year. So I thought this podcast is perfect for our insights and inspiration because it is a mum whose cousin recommended a podcast to her of mine, and she didn't listen to it for ages. And then when she finally did, she said to her husband, you need to listen to this and we need to get to it and toilet train our nonverbal child. Now, whether your goal is toilet training or something completely different, I think this podcast has so many tips and strategies for how to take on a new goal. And one of them was when she was like getting her head around, well, what is the worst thing that can happen? He wets his pants. What is the worst thing that can happen? He poos his pants. Like really thinking about, okay, what are we going to put in place? What are the supports? What are the rewards? How are we going to make sure we're both on the same page? How are we going to be consistent? And also like she did a tick sheet too because she didn't realize the progress sometimes. So I really think that it's really thinking about what is your goal? What are the structures you're going to put around it? Now, any of you in the early years, I really believe in a busy early childhood centre, you should only do 2 goals at a time. And that is why in my early childhood book, it's actually spiral bound and I revised and updated it last year in 2024. And I recommend like you choose 2 goals and say, let's pretend we're working on a child waiting and a child finishing. Well, I would recommend in the book, it tells you why to teach it and what to do. But even though in this podcast, Jack's sharing her experience of toileting, you can apply the same strategies. You need consistency with all staff. You need to notice the progress, not perfection. What is the worst thing that can happen? You really try and think about what are the things we need to put in place to support the child. Jack shares they had different rewards and how they went about motivating their son. And it was just like also, she could not believe how fast things happened, like how fast he toilet trained. She had made out it was going to take weeks in her head, and she couldn't believe how quickly they achieved it. My guess is if you just focus on 2 goals, you do achieve so much more. That's why in the early childhood, I always say 2 goals at a time. Now, if you're in secondary, no different. Your goal might be, for one of my boys, it was to get to class on time and hand in his homework. They were the 2 goals, right? And we put in place a whole lot of strategies around that, including, as many of you know, transition starts the night before, taking down, saying we've finished Wednesday, tomorrow's Thursday, what's due, where are you up to, do you need any help? Like on Wednesday, checking what was due Thursday. So he was prepared and making sure he had everything in place. Same as you'll hear in this video, everything in place, including when they were going out, buying some special undies to help him. So looking at what are the supports and structures you need in place, no matter what age. I found this podcast really interesting, but particularly if you have non-verbal or non-speaking children, I think what was inspiring for me was just that don't get into that self-fulfilling prophecy. Don't get into the belief my child won't do something. Give it a go. What is the worst thing that can happen? As I say, this summer series is all about tips and strategies and insights, and I think this is a very insightful podcast. If you are looking for more tips and strategies, I'm going to put at the end the toilet training podcast that she listened to, so I'll link that at the end. But if you are working in early years, I've got $10 off my early years book this week, and it is filled with hundreds of tips and strategies and save you a lot of time Googling and searching around. I also do have a book on toilet training if any of you are making that a goal this year. So I hope you have a chance to reflect on 2024, make some goals for 2025. And yeah, I hope I'm here to help you on your journey. And the biggest inspiration from this podcast, share one of your favorite episodes from last year. Why don't you look at which ones you listened to and share it with a friend, because you don't know who it's going to help, a friend or colleague. This podcast came from somebody sharing a podcast with them. And I think sometimes we feel uncomfortable going, you should listen to this. But I think that's just saying to people, I'm here for you. Whether they listen or not, it's a nice thing to reach out, and sharing a podcast is a really nice way to be supportive. Okay, hope you can find one you love. Well, welcome everybody. I am super excited to have Jack on the podcast today, who is going to share with you the success of toilet training her son after listening to my podcast. So welcome, Jack, and tell us how it went.
Fine. Thank you for having me. Yes, well, it came about because I sent you an email to thank you so much for my husband and I and my son, because after listening to your podcast, it gave me the strength and the enthusiasm, like it just gave me the effort to do it. So when he was 3, I thought that maybe I would start the toilet training, and he has different therapists and they said, yes, we can give it a go. Even though I was a bit apprehensive, he is level 2 diagnosis and he is nonverbal. So I really thought it was just going to be too hard. And I just kept thinking, I'll give it time. So on his birthday, just after that, which was June last year, we tried a few different things, like just getting him used to the toilet, just going in, down. We had a box of things for him, all of the things that our therapists had helped us with. Then the idea was and that took a while. Sometimes he just refused to go in there. Sometimes he'd sit there for 15 minutes. It was a hit and miss. He wondered why he was there, I think. It was just quite difficult. And then it was, how about we just drop some him in the morning for 2 hours here and there, see how it goes. So I'd get my enthusiasm up and I'd think, yep, we can do this. And it just wasn't really working. So kind of took a step back, thought we'll do it again, stepped back. And then my cousin, who has been to sent me a link to your podcast about toilet training because I'd been chatting to her about it. And I just let it sit there for quite some time. And then around about Christmas, to it, and then I listened to the story of the father who also did the toilet training when he went traveling, that story.
Yes, yeah.
And I listened to it and I took that in, and the whole thing of just taking them out of nappies and putting them straight into jocks was scary.
Yeah.
As I read a couple of other things from what you had said, I got the courage up and I spoke to my husband and I said, because I'm a teacher as well, and I said, after Christmas when we get back from holidays, he's going out of nappies and we're not going to look back. And my husband was like, okay. And I sent him your podcast and he listened to it and he said, yep, okay, we're right to go. So then the time came, and I remember my sister as well had said, she's got a girl the same age, and she had said to me, you have to be mentally prepared as a parent. And until you're mentally prepared to do it, then you have to wait. And I said, no, I'm ready to go. So Christmas last year, so it was January, I had the course. So I just said, tomorrow's the day and we're never going back. But it was scary. I didn't think he'd understand. I was worried that I was going to have to go back to nappies and I would have failed. So all of this was happening. But we did it. The very first day was quite disheartening, but I knew that we were getting somewhere. I had this piece of paper sitting on the bench and I was writing down the time, putting him on 15 minutes, 20 minutes. He started to hate it, wouldn't go in there, trying to distract him, all of these different things, trying everything. He wet his pants that time 7 times in a row before midday. 7 pairs of drops. And I couldn't work out how come he's weeing so much, but he obviously started to stop because what's going on? Then we'd go and change it. 15 minutes later, before I even got to put him back on the toilet, it would happen again. So I'm just doing cross all the times. And then after midday, I caught him and he just started to go, and he was so shocked because he was sitting on the toilet and it happened. And I got M&Ms down and I gave him 5 M&Ms in a cup. He thought that was great because he loves M&Ms. So I think he did 3 wees on the toilet that afternoon on his first day.
On day one.
On day 1.
Where he could have given up by 12 o'clock.
I almost thought about it.
I'll blame you. I would have been, because I think what I love what you're sharing is that vulnerability and worry, but you were just like, no, I'm going to do it. And head down, bum up, as they say. Yeah,
exactly. And those times that he went, I'd give him the M&Ms. And then I found it really hard to get him in there because by then he was like, why am I going in here all the time? I don't want to do it. So he was obsessed with Paddington at the time, ABC, and they went for 11 minutes, which was perfect. So I'd just get the phone out and it was time to go. I was saving Paddington only for when he was on the toilet. So he wasn't allowed to watch it on TV. So as soon as he'd hear the start of the music, he would go flying into the toilet, sit up there, and there was a little towel hook, and I'd just sit there. We'd both watch it together. And if he didn't, so we just went to sit down the whole time.
Yeah.
Which he's still doing, by the way, but hey, he's toilet trained.
Yeah.
So that went on for a little while, and in the mornings I would get him up and I'd go straight in there, but he'd hear the Paddington and he'd run down to the toilet, sit up on the toilet. Not go there, it was a bit of a push and pull, but on day 2, I looked at the ticks and the crosses and there was like 5 crosses and 4 ticks.
Wow.
But I think the hardest part in those first couple of days was just watching him all day. I just was following him around all day, looking for the signs. It was quite mentally challenging, and I did get upset quite a few times. And my husband would come home from work. He'd be like, wow, we went to the toilet 4 times on the toilet. And then I was like, yeah, you did. That's pretty good. So each day it just got better and better. Yes, he had accidents, but it just seemed he was starting to get it. And I remember one of the things that I also read that you said, or whether you spoke it in your podcast, was about how if his toilet he toilet trained to go in his nap.
That's right.
Because when I was doing that 2-hour jocks in the morning, he wouldn't go. And as soon as I put his nappy on, he'd go. And I thought, yeah, he is toilet trained. That was one of the big things as well that really helped.
And I think that's the hard part when you hear neurodiverse children versus neurotypical children. Neurotypical kids still have accidents too.
Yeah.
And it's part of the problem. People want this perfectionism. I've been teaching 5 and 6-year-olds. They still have accidents. Like, it's not like aiming for this perfect, but you're right. He was toilet trained in his nappy. That's in the moment he was born. That was what was on. That's all he knew. But what I love is that you were able to have your husband say to you 4 times, like, you've just got to keep that positive. Even if it's 1 in the first week, it's 1. Right?
Exactly. Yes. And then as well, I thought with the number 2s, I thought, well, he will to go in. He seemed to hold it until it was bedtime to go in his nappy.
Yes.
And so I thought, you know what, I'll just put the nappy up bed so at least he can go in that. But we would take the nappy in, I would put it down the toilet, I'd let him flush here, and I would say, you know what, bye bye poo, things like that. And every time he pooed from then on that day, we took it in. And every now and again during the day, I could see he was about to the signs. And this one day, it was probably day 3 or 4, I could see he was about to go, and he started his jogs, and I whisked him into the toilet and put him on, and he kept going and stopped.
Yeah.
And he was just like, wow, what is going on? And I cheered a little plat, and I actually got down. He loves the fun size Kit Kats. So the Kit Kats were for, I know it was all chocolate. Kit Kats was if he didn't poo. The 5 M&Ms for the wheeze. But by about day 5 with the wheeze, because I was still kind of taking him in and things like that. He wasn't running in there by himself at that stage. And after he did them, then he just, because I thought, how am I going to stop the M&Ms now? Every time he goes,
Yeah.
So he just stopped looking for them. He stopped asking for them because I was sitting up on the dryer so he could see them in a container. And so that's what he was motivated to do at the start. But after like 4 or 5 days, he just stopped himself.
I can't tell you how often that happens to me. It's like people worry about the M&Ms, but actually once the child's in a routine, I don't know, it just sort of doesn't seem important. It was a big deal to him, but now it's not a big deal. So I always say, don't get ahead of yourself. He's not addicted to M&Ms and Kit Kats. It's just sort of over that hurdle.
Yeah.
But thank you for sharing about the poos going in the toilet, because I think that's really important that they understand. They see the poos go in the toilet, because neurotypical children follow families into the toilet, but he probably never followed you in. So he had no concept of what you guys were doing in there. Actually, him seeing that. And then, So are you telling me within a week you conquered wheeze and poos?
Within a week, I would say, then I decided to take him to the shopping centre after a week. But I got
There's a woman on a mission.
Like I could not stay in the house any longer. It was because I was still watching him all the time, so I didn't want him to go on the couch or anything like that. It is a bit of a blur.
Yeah.
And I feel like at that time I was quite emotional, and I was trying not to be, because I would get at the end of that, especially, it sounds so silly now to think about it, but like on day 7, for example, he didn't have any accidents. Then at 3 o'clock he had an accident. I thought we were going to get through a whole day. And I was like, looking back, ridiculous. But at the time, I think because you're a bit heightened and try to relax. My husband was really good with that. He kept saying, who cares? Look, he's doing really well. And I think having him as championing was a big thing. And we talked about it a bit to say, really, this toilet planning, this is probably one of the hardest things that we're actually going to have to do. If you think about it like that. And looking back, it wasn't easy. Back and go, oh, was it actually that difficult?
That's why I really appreciate you coming on and sharing, because I think a lot of families do put it off because it is a big thing and it is a big goal. And when is the right time? And it is daunting. And really, I just think people hearing, well, look, you are going to be a bit emotional and you are going to be stuck at home for a week. But then at the other end of it, as you say, looking back sort of a year later, it's like, why was I so worked up about it? And I think that's knowing that you can get through it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think especially being nonverbal, I just really thought it wasn't going to happen. I just thought, how am I going to be able to? I don't know how much he understands of what I'm saying. But yeah, the number twos were actually a little bit harder. But in the end, sometimes he would go back to just waiting for his nappy, and then sometimes he'd just do it. But the day we went to the shopping centre, I put the jocks on that they're still jocks, but if they go, it doesn't actually wet through. Those really good
training pants. Yeah, they look like jocks are great.
Yeah. So we did that, and we got to the shopping centre, and I went into the family toilet to put him on, and he just and I didn't want to get on there. So off we went. We went shopping for a little bit, and he did it in his pants. So we changed, and then we got home, and I was like flustered at the time. And then I got home, and I was like, well, it didn't really matter that he wet his pants. But yeah, then we moved house actually, and it was only about 2 months after we did it, and he actually regressed with the twos, not with the ones.
Mm.
And he would just sit down a lot and just did not want to go there. I don't know what it was, whether it was because we moved house. I did read that you said that could be a factor, but he just kept sitting down and not wanting to go until the last minute, or he'd just do a tiny bit in his pants and just keep waiting. But strangely enough, I went to see my kinesiologist, who I go to regularly, and I said to her, is there anything, and she said, it's your stress.
Yeah.
And I said, and by this, so he'd never held, and he'd held for 3 days, 4 days, and this was on day 5.
Oh my goodness.
I know. And I was quite worried, and I went to see her just randomly, and she said, it's not him, it's you. You're so worried now and stressed about it. He's thinking, what should I be worried about or stressed about? And that's why, so you need to go home to him. And whether you think he understands, you need to say to him, I'm not going to tell you when you need to go to the toilet anymore. It's all up to you. She said, because the worst thing that's going to happen is he's going to poo his pants. So I got home. He was on the toilet as I got home. And then after that, he just went as normal. And then he did have another regression, doing the same thing again. I think maybe when he was at kinder, because he didn't want to go at kinder. And then we just let it go. It'll come back. And then now he's good again.
And you will see this with kids like him and that being nonverbal. I always say it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Don't look for this perfect projection in lots of things with him. And what you're saying, that 6th sense, don't underestimate. He picks your emotions. I mean, moving house, you would have been stressed.
Yeah.
Up on that moving house, right? And that's a big pressure to put on a parent to say, your stress is going to impact. But he has to be super sensitive because he hasn't got a way of communicating, and he relies on you to understand him. And if your stress levels are up, then he sort of mirrors that. That's my experience. Like I often say, when I had a class of 8 nonverbal children, sometimes I had to do the breathing activity. They pick up on and I used to get terrible migraines when I was younger. And I'm a student who knew I was getting a migraine before I did.
Oh, wow.
Come over and pat me. And then I worked out when he did on my shoulder, and I worked out that was connected to when I had a migraine. I always say, don't underestimate what these kids are taking in from you. And particularly when you have that bond, like I always call my students my children, and people think they're mine, but they're not. But when you have that connection with a child, of course they're going to pick up on those things, just like you moving house or him starting at kinder or even a change of staff at school. All of those things will always often see that step back. But what I love is you've stayed consistent and you're like, no, we're not going back. We're just going one little step back.
And it was funny as well with the wheeze. It got to a stage, like when I'd see him do the dance, I'd say, come on, let's go to the toilet. That first time that he just took off into the toilet by himself, I just could not believe it in his little jocks and just remember thinking, wow. But then there was a time where I got to a stage, I can't remember how long later it was. It might have been about a month later, where he obviously needed to go. And I said, come on, let's go. And he goes like this, no. And I said, I think you need to go. And I thought, no, just let him go. He knows. And then about 10 minutes later, I said, you need to go to the toilet. And then about 10 minutes later, he actually wet his pants. But he never wet his pants after that. It was almost like he was testing how long can I wait before I actually...
No doubt that's what he was doing.
Yeah, so me doing that.
Yeah.
hindered him from knowing how long he could hold for. And I was just like, yes, he weed. And I thought, I told him he needed to go. And then I realized, I think he needed to test out how long, because he never has wet his pants since.
Wow. I love that. And it's probably the same with the poos, because some of my kids get constipated. I wonder if they're trying to work out, what is this feeling? Because I don't think it's on the podcast you listened to, but one of my mums, her son, who's verbal, said, Mummy, I don't know if this feeling in my tummy is I need to do a poo or I'm angry.
Oh, wow.
Like, you think your emotions in your stomach, like I can get like that, is that feeling that I'm scared or I'm angry or I'm in the toilet. So how does a child know unless really they have an accident to know that different feeling, right? And I always say verbal children are a voice for nonverbal children. So that would make sense that your son need to, well, what does it actually feel like? Yeah, I love it.
What do you say? Because he did number 2 in the bath a couple of times, but and my husband had just said to me a couple of days ago, I said, he's doing really well with the poos again. There's no worries at all. And he said, yeah, but I wonder if it was because that was the first time he had diarrhea. I think he didn't really know what it was. And so I think he was scared to do it, maybe. Kind of thought, because it was about for 3 or 4 weeks after he'd had diarrhea and he hadn't had it before.
Yeah. So diarrhea is a completely different feeling. It's more that giggling than that heaviness, right? So that makes sense. He had to experience that to know. And how do you explain that to someone else? So I wouldn't take up too much of your time, but all day. But
we could.
A massive, massive thank you and congratulations. And thank you for sharing the ups and downs, because I think that's motivating for families. And like the dad that came on that inspired you, I'm hoping that it will really inspire other parents to have a go. And yeah, thank you so much.
That's okay. Thanks so much, Sue.
Well, I hope you found that interesting, whether you're toilet training a child or got another goal in mind. I think there are some very helpful tips, as I said at the introduction. Don't forget to register for January 24th or February 5th if you haven't already for my upcoming training. If you prefer online on demand, I have an early childhood course. I have my sort of signature course, I guess, the same one you can do live virtual or face-to-face. I have courses on emotional regulation, PDA, executive functioning, so many great courses that you can do to get you ready for the next year. And one way to reach your goals is to do some training. If you're not sure which course is for you, email me. I love helping you. If you've never emailed me, all you need to do is subscribe to my e-newsletter and then you can email me straight back. And I love hearing from you. That is how I originally met Jacqueline, via an email where she emailed me to say she loved the podcast and how helpful it was. So I hope you can email me this year and share your successes and insights, or let me know how I can help you. Well, hello, Sue Larkey here. Today is a mini training for kids you know who aren't toilet trained. So if you know kids in nappies or kids who have accidents, today's for you. Today is really a mini training for anyone who wants to get a kid toilet trained and make a difference. So whether you're a teacher or a parent, I still think this is really, really important, or a teacher assistant, because sometimes as a teacher, I've had to get the toilet training happening at school so that it can happen at home, because sometimes parents are tired, they've tried everything. So if you know a kid who's still in nappies, this is for you. Now, I just want to say, if you know a kid is still in pull-ups are nappies. I get so frustrated when they're like, they're in a pull-up. Anything a child wears that holds urine is a nappy, because I have so many kids who stay in pull-ups for far too long. I hate to say it, yet again, this is one of my absolute passions. So those of you who've listened to a few of my podcasts know I get pretty worked up about things, and this is one of them. I get really upset when kids on the spectrum are still in nappies beyond 5 years of age, because the longer they're in nappies, the less bladder control they have, and often bowel control too. Actually, all these are muscles that need to be worked on. And so if a child's had a nappy on forever, guess what? They don't get to build that strength in those muscles. And as a result, they actually lose bladder control and bowel control, or end up with terrible constipation issues. So please, please, if you know a child who's 3, 4, 5, still in nappies, let's do it. Let's get this toilet training working. Now, I'm going to go back a step here. I don't call it toilet training. I call it toilet timing. It's getting kids actually having set routines and times to go to the toilet. Once they're in a set routine, then they might be able to initiate it. But in my experience, if they haven't learnt to toilet train using traditional techniques, we need to do a thing called toilet timing and no nappies. Yes, you heard that word correctly, no. And by no, I mean never, ever, 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 ever have a nappy during the day. There will be no nappies. And the reason for that is as soon as you put a nappy on them, they will go because they hold until the nappy's on. That's the routine. Since the moment they were born, they had a nappy. So we need to change the routine. And I know kids on the spectrum don't like change, but we need to get them out of nappies and using toilets. So some of you are going, Sue, I've tried. I know you've tried lots of things, but Jo Atkins, who has a son with autism, and myself have put together a great book called Tips for Toileting. I'm going to give you 10 T-tips today. If that doesn't work, I highly recommend you invest in the book. And it is an investment, and I promise it's cheaper than nappies. But if you invest in the book, we've got everything in there you need. And look how much you're spending on nappies. Honestly, it is worth getting out of those nappies. So let's start off with, how do you know if your kid is ready to go to the toilet? How do you know? Well, there's a few things, and Jo and I have talked about this a lot. First, we recommend taking them into the toilet with you, just checking out any sensory issues. Are they scared of the flushing toilet? Just take them in, let them watch you. Just start off with that part of the routine. So work out if there are any sensory issues, because for many of my kids, they're quite scared of the bathroom. I mean, I've had parents do the most wonderful things over the years, change their toilet to look like Thomas, paint their whole bathroom purple because that's their child's favourite colour, put freezers in there of Barbie dolls or whatever they love. So make the bathroom a less scary place, whatever that means for your child. In Jo's case, she literally camped in the bathroom with Joshua for a week. He held a poo and he was so grumpy. But every time he did a wee or a poo, they'd hit play on his favourite show, so that reinforced the behaviour. The other thing which I agree with Jo is they need to be able to model behaviour. So what I mean is they can actually follow instructions, that they actually understand the instructions as you give them to them. So model or follow instructions is really important. But some of my kids are coactively, by model or follow instructions, I mean that I can sort of help them sit on the toilet. Don't force them. That will really scare them. Really, that you can work together to do things. So what do we need to do? So step 1, avoid potties. So start with the end in mind. We want them to learn to go to the toilet. So let's put them straight on the toilet. Kids on the spectrum often learn to go on a potty, but then don't know how to go on a toilet. So step number 1 is really think about which toilet you're going to use, how it's going to look. And I would just use the same toilet to start that first process. Step 2 is thinking about what visuals you're going to use. So that might be a visual schedule that shows them what to do. And in the book Tips for Toileting, there's some you can print out or you can make your own. Some of my kids actually video the process, but you need to think what visuals you're going to use. And is it the sign for toilet, as in sign language? Or how can the child communicate toilet? How are you going to communicate toilet? Because one person goes wee-wees, and one goes poo-poos, and one goes onesies, and one goes twosies. How about we all just say toilet time, or clear language, or a visual? I have learned over the years we need to make toileting fun. Lots of us get really stressed about it and worked up about it. Guys, if they wet their pants, don't make a big fuss about it. Doesn't matter. I know it can be yucky if they do a poo, but really no different to them doing it in a nappy. So let's make it fun. Let's have a little song we skip on the way to the toilet, or a song we sing on the toilet. I've got lots of parents who've sung hours and hours of songs on the toilet. We need to make it fun. Or if they love iPads, if you're really like, I don't know what to do. I've had kids, older kids particularly, who aren't toilet trained or toilet time, just get a plastic sleeve and put the iPad in the plastic sleeve. So if you get any wee or poo on it, whatever, you can just throw the plastic sleeve away. So you might have a video playing or music or something, but make toilet timing fun, not a big stressful, you need to go to the toilet and forcing them to sit. Try and make it as fun as possible. Take the pressure off. One of my little boys, we had a special little train. Let's go and see Gordon, rather than toilet time, because he just had become so resistant to the concept of toileting. Number 4, rewards are one of the most important parts of toileting. So they need a motivator. So as I said, Joe used video. I've got parents who have used chocolate. I've got parents who have used like the Gordon or painted the toilet. Make learning fun, but also make it rewarding. Like, what is in it for this kid to actually go? So have a think about that. But over time, you will fade them. So by fading, I mean, at first they might get that reward every time, but we're not going to give that to them every time after 2 months. I would try and maybe every second time they go or every third time. So have a think about that. Number 5 is one of Joe's tips. Base yourself in or right next to the toilet for the first few days. Have as many home comforts in the room for the child to make it a fun learning environment. So we're just going to plant ourselves in there. So as soon as we see them need to go, straight on the toilet, okay? One of my little boys, we found bath would actually help the poo come out, but we'd grab him straight out of the bath onto the toilet. So really have a think what will make that a fun environment. And you're just going to have to camp yourself there for a couple of days, but it is worth it. It is so worth it if you can. Number 6, remove the nappies. Please, once you've started toilet training, just takes one person to put a nappy back on this kid and all your good work will be undone, or they'll hold till the nappy's put on. Now, if you're like, but Sue, it's half an hour to get in the car to get to the shops or preschool, go as before you get in the car. Go to the $2 shop and get yourself some puppy training pads or plastic bags. Put something on the car seat so it doesn't matter if they wee in that half an hour. As soon as you get to the shops, go to the toilet again. So just be cautious at the shop. Sometimes they have hand dryers the kids are scared of. So I tend to take them into the disabled or access toilets because they can actually see the hand dryer in there. Even if they're on the bus for 2 hours, guys, most of them will be able to hold if you make that a routine. Toilet before they leave or minimize their drinks, and then toilet as soon as you arrive. Now, please remember, it is toilet timing, not toilet training. So at first, we might be taking them every 10 minutes, every half an hour. And many times you'll sit them on the toilet after 10 minutes, and then when you get them off, they'll do the wee. That shows they don't know how to release their bladder. So what are we going to do for those kids? We're going to do blowing activities, blowing bubbles. So when you blow bubbles or blow one of those little fan Ferris wheel things, actually blowing out will release their bladder. Or moving your feet up and down. So do a fun little activity where they have to move their feet up and down. Moving your feet up and down can release your bladder. You would laugh if you could see me now, guys. I'm doing all the actions to go with this, but hopefully you know what I'm saying. If you want to see me do the actions, jump on my Facebook page. I actually did a Facebook Live around toilet training too, because it's one of my big passions. And I've got the blowing bubbles in that and the feet movement. The other thing, some of my kids actually need their feet off the ground to release their bladder or bowel to make it easier. Getting something for them to put their feet on. I don't recommend those little plastic stools. Some of my kids don't like the wobble, but if they're seeing an occupational therapist, they might be able to help you with it. But sometimes just getting something heavy, even books for them to put their feet on, something heavy for them to put their feet on will help their bowel or bladder release. So take them every 10 minutes, then every 15, then every 20, 25, 30, and work out if they can release. And I'm ideally working up to an hour, hour and a half before they need to go. Number 8, teach the whole steps of toileting from the beginning. So we go in, we pull down our pants, we sit on the toilet, we wipe. Now, some of my kids don't like toilet paper. If you've been using baby wipes with them since they're little, just teach them to use the baby wipes. I wouldn't be too fussed about that. Some of my kids really never learn to wipe because they don't, it's quite, can't think of the word. The coordination required to wipe your bottom is actually quite complex, just balancing, bending over, wiping. So I wouldn't worry too much about that, but if you can do it coactively, so at least they've got a bit of an idea, or even they pull out the wipe and give it to you, or the toilet paper, that would be fantastic. So teach them that, teach them to wash their hands, teach them the whole process, including flushing the toilet. If you have a kid who's really scared of flushing the toilet, I understand, just leave it, choose your battles. But when they leave, say, I'm going to flush the toilet. So they have a concept of that. Number 9, some kids have sensory sensitivity, and I've already talked about a few of those. Some kids don't like their feet off the ground, so that's why I'd be putting something heavy under their feet. Some kids have very specific feelings for their undies too, because they're used to a heavy nappy. So some of my kids need those training pants you used to be able to get that feel more like a nappy, those heavy flannelette training pants. Some of them like boxer shorts, some like silk. Cut the labels out, like really think about the issues around undies. Wipes, as I said, or toilet paper. Some of my kids are really hypersensitive what they use. Some of my kids like to play with the whole toilet paper roll and seek sensory in the toilet. So I would be just giving them a few pieces of paper to distract them, or sometimes I actually have to buy the sheets of toilet paper, not having the roll, because they love the visualness of the roll. Sound, some of my kids are scared of the flush. Some toilets make a sort of running water sound that scares them, or a drip in there. Really be conscious of the sounds in the toilet, and of course the hand dryers, be highly aware of those. And smell. Sometimes this is why kids will go at school and not at home, because the school toilets are really smelly. So all of these things need to be taken into account. And step number 10 is create really good routines around toilet timing. So have set times when they must go, particularly at bedtime and in the morning. So some of your kids will need a nappy put on them at night or a pull-up, and that's fine, but at bedtime, not before. So I would be putting it on them in bed. It's time to say, we do our last wee or poo, then we put our pull-up on and we go to sleep. As soon as they wake up in the morning, I would be getting that pull-up or nappy off them, because otherwise we're just confusing them what happens. So take it straight off and sit on the toilet. Now, unfortunately, because so many of my kids struggle with sleep, lots of parents will say, why don't you just get them up in the night to go to the toilet and carry them in? Some of my kids, unfortunately, if you woke them up at 11 o'clock to go to the toilet, they actually wouldn't go back to sleep. So they take so long to get to sleep or don't get in a deep sleep. That getting up that you can do with neurotypicals often doesn't work for ASD kids. Some parents I know have tried the nasal sprays that have worked. Talk to your GP. There's lots of new things on the market. Some of my parents have tried everything and just had no success. I truly believe these kids do not know when they need the toilet until it's too late. So they wake up, but they're already weeing. And really that's why we toilet time, not toilet train, because they don't know they need the toilet until they're busting. The rest of us can feel our bladder sort of filling up or getting full. So many of my kids at school, by the time they ask to go to the toilet, they stand up to go and they wet their pants. And they're the kids that I'd have set times, routines, toilet timing, not toilet training, because their brain doesn't tell them they need the toilet until it's too late. And I think that's what happens in the night to these kids as well. So I highly recommend for nighttime, just choose your battles. Don't worry too much, but please make sure you have a routine around that so that the pull-up's not put on till bedtime and is taken off first thing in the morning. Now, if you have a kid who is hiding and going under tables and squatting to do their poos and wees, maybe they want privacy in the bathroom. Maybe they don't want you in there. So some of my kids, I would recommend put them in there, shut the door, but sometimes I have to get them to show me they've actually gone. But Anyway, having worked with lots of kids, I'm smiling because I've seen all sorts of things over the years. But I wish you the best of luck. See how you go with those 10 tips. If you need more, highly recommend you have a look at the book Tips for Toileting by Jo Atkins and myself. Best of luck. And here is to a fantastic toilet trained kid coming up soon. Best of luck. Bye. I hope you've got some great tips and strategies from this podcast. If you enjoy learning with me, I highly recommend you think about doing a course this year. Not only do I have courses by me, I have them with people with a lived experience, Temple Grandin, Dean Beadle, or other educators like Laura Kirby on PDA. I have a wealth of courses that'll make a difference to you. So make sure you check out all my online courses because you can learn online, anywhere, anytime, in a place that suits you, at a speed that suits you. So check out all the online courses that are available to make a difference to you and the children you know.